welcome everyone to
Not Fighting.
I felt like
It's weird with somebody else here.
Well, yeah, I thought like he might jump in and say something. For those that are watching, you're already aware, but for those that are not watching and listening, you're completely unaware that we have a guest with us today. Our first guest ever. Please welcome to the show, Nick Schrock.
Nick Schrock. This is now Nick's podcast. I'm taking over and I'll be asking all the questions.
Probably not like that far from the truth.
That might be the second or third time I've ever called you Nick.
Yes. I was like, I thought you were going to say at least Nick Moose Schrock.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed.
I know.
I don't think of Moose as like a nickname like Nick Moose Schrock. It doesn't flow. You're just Moose.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, you don't put it in like in between.
It's like share. Replaces both.
Yes.
Yeah. I had to use your real name whenever at your wedding because I officiated your wedding, and had to use it then. And then like maybe I'm guessing the first time I met you.
Right, because Moose didn't exist then.
I think it was
for like 9 months.
The first time you met him, it is when you started calling that.
Yeah, mooses weren't invented then yet.
No, you gave that Nick, or you started calling him that like after you watched him fight as a white belt for the first time ever.
I started calling them that because took about 3 weeks before I couldn't triangle him anymore because I was like, he's strong like a moose, and I remember thinking like a moose because their antlers are obviously like really wide, and I just remember him being wide and that being the problem. I thought
a
for finishing the
broad-shouldered
triangle.
man.
The most Tyler Bishop analogy I've ever heard.
Right. I'm like, yeah, why moose? There's a lot of strong animals out there, but a moose.
Yeah, I mean, it's the strongest of the what do they call the things?
It's not
just hold it.
Nick has picked up the microphone. And it's a microphone
it's close.
stand.
It's closer to me.
He's holding it like it's a handheld mic.
It's either that or I have to like I'm gonna break that drink for sure. It's like I'll just sit forward like this.
You can go in and out.
Well, that's what you said.
We can set up the side table so that you have it right next to you.
It's too late. We're in. We're going.
And cut, and then it's a cut, and then the microphones are like hanging from the ceiling.
It's 12 tables. There's tables everywhere. We need more tables.
Yeah, that's the
sure.
thing is we just need at least 2 tables a person.
Mm-hmm.
Two per person.
In this room.
Yes.
Have you ever listened to the podcast before, Nick?
No, first time. I'm joking. Yeah, I've listened to almost all the episodes. I don't think I listened to the most recent one.
So anytime someone on the podcast has heard me talk or reference a story and I say something like, well, my friend actually, or a guy we know that's actually really strong, that guy is all the same guy. And it's all yeah.
That's your only favorite reference for strong people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to train together. We still do train together, but we're in different schools. But every day for 8 years.
Yeah, right. That's what my shins say.
Yeah, but we did take gaps where we didn't train at all for a few months, and it's because you were hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
because
sorry.
of you.
Sorry about that.
It's weird. Yeah, I think people are always like, oh, yeah, that guy's really strong. I'm like, yeah, you know how he looks strong because you look like you're built like a square. But he's also, I always say, he's twice as strong as he looks.
So what's the what was the scariest injury? Either, like, what's the scariest injury training? What happened? Was it the sternum?
When you collapsed the sternum.
Yeah, maybe.
That's
sternum?
for sure.
Yeah, when you collapsed the sternum.
Yeah. Have you told that story here?
No, I don't think so.
I don't even know, when that happened.
Also,
came home
this isn't my fault. This is 100% Tyler's fault.
But when it happened, I feel like you came home and told me about it because you didn't tell me, I was there, but I didn't see it happen.
Well,
and,
it wasn't
I was
the
like,
worst.
how is that possible?
Well, it wasn't the worst injury. So you said scariest. And
Yes.
that's why I say
Scariest.
this one is because I've definitely had, probably a dozen worse injuries because that one was more of like a nuisance afterwards. So for people that are like, you broke your sternum and it was just like a nuisance, it folded in half. It didn't break. And what happened was, he was.
But I feel like that, I don't think your sternum folds in half.
No one here is a doctor.
Just all your ribs dislocate at the same time and come back?
They didn't dislocate. I just felt the center of my chest touch itself.
I know.
I felt both sides of my chest.
At one point, your nipples were one.
Yeah. And so he was knee cut passing, and I was trying to belly down like an invert, which is what like I kind of did. But he had grabbed my lapel, so that the way that I was turning, the grip he had on my lapel was keeping me from being able to like turn my chest down.
Mm.
So I was trying to belly down so hard, and he was pulling me up so hard as he was knee cutting that I felt my chest like just bend, and it kind of like bowed as if you had a piece of bamboo and you just like tried to break it over your knee, but it didn't bust and it just sprang back. That's what I felt like my chest did. And we both completely froze.
I felt it as
Did you-
well.
you felt it?
We knew immediately something was not right.
And it was one of those ones where I didn't go like, ow. And he
I
wasn't
was
like,
wondering, did he squeak?
It was more of a just like that. Just like that.
That's so perfect. Aw, babe.
So
Well, it's
Not
not,
your life.
it wasn't pain. It was just like, well, now, because
It's like, what just happened?
yeah. So I felt it bend in half. And then I completely stopped doing everything. And I felt that he did too. And the fact that he didn't say anything and I didn't say anything. And he was just kind of like hovering over me. Kind of like how you like hover over like an infant child where you're just looking at it and you're like, look at it. They're just so vulnerable. Like
It's vulnerable.
I just kind of sat there and it was like, you know, when you're hurt, but you just have no idea how bad it is. Like I might just black out here in a second. My heart might fall out of my chest. I just remember like sitting there and just being like, don't breathe, don't move. Like the next feeling you have might be extreme pain. And he was just kind of like looking at me. He's like, you okay there, buddy? And I remember you petting me.
Just like,
Yeah.
probably a pat.
And yeah, sure enough.
Pat's better
A
than
pat, not a pet.
It felt sore and I felt my chest and it was normal again. And yeah, could I belly down and invert from knee cut passes for a month? No, of course not.
Yeah.
But definitely had worse injuries. It didn't really bother me in my day-to-day life.
Right.
I think that's happened. Like that happens with almost any injury. If you feel a pop or you feel something hurt, like especially with your knees, like if you like irritate them,
Yeah.
you kind of like freeze, and it's like the initial shock is like that popped. That wasn't supposed to do that. Am I okay? And then you guys are messing with this, but and it's like you have to like kind of sit there and like take account like, how bad is this? Does it really hurt? Or is it like, am I going to be okay?
See, now there's a certain portion of our audience, the people that have had lots of knee injuries, that are going to recognize this. But when you get a knee injury, there's this like honeymoon period that I describe it, which is pretty much for the next 2 hours.
I think it depends on what kind of injury it is, though.
I mean, when I've torn my ACLs, I'd train for another 2 hours with very few problems.
I know, but like, what if it's a different injury than an ACL?
Then I'm not going to be able to speak to it, obviously. Jenna.
When you guys are training with someone, like, have you ever been rolling with someone and they get hurt? And they're like, let's keep going. Like, you are not okay. It's like, you should stop training.
Not as many times as you, but yeah.
This is giving me a bad reputation.
Well,
Why did I agree to this?
I went to knee and belly, and I felt their rib pop out, and then,
Yeah.
they wanted to keep training.
I think we kept training whenever you bent my sternum in half. I was like, I'm fine.
No, we didn't keep training.
You didn't?
But I think
No.
that's the natural thing is like,
I think we knew better.
you you do kind of want to just keep training because once you like cool off, you're
Yeah.
gonna feel the pain. So I'm like, let's just finish this until like while I'm warm, because when I cool down, I'm gonna feel it.
Yeah, that's true.
And you have those injuries too, where it's like when you cool down, like it's so much worse than what you thought it was.
Yeah.
But after a decent amount of time, you start to realize like this one's gonna be bad when I stop moving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those ones where I remember saying before, like, hey, let's do a couple more rounds or whatever. And they're like, are you sure? Are you okay? I'm like, yeah, because once I cool down, I'm not going to be able to train for like a week. So I want to get the time in now.
I'm the opposite. When I get hurt, I'm a baby. I'm like, I'm going home. I'm going home. I am out of here. I'm not going to see you guys for a while.
I think that the last time I hurt my elbow really bad, I was like, it hurts. I know how this is going to feel because I've had this happen before. Let's just train through the rest of this, because it was like right before PANS and before everything shut down. And I was like, I'm just going to keep training because I know it's okay right now. I can get through this, but it's going to hurt later. And that's kind of exactly how it went. I think the only other time that happened was when I rolled my ankle. We were doing like stuff at the track, and I rolled my ankle, and I was like, it was bad rolled. Like it felt like really bad. But then I'm like, I think it's fine. I'm just gonna keep running. And then I did like a 400-meter like sprint, and then went home. And as I was like walking home, I'm like, or walking to my car, I'm like, this is bad. This is very bad.
So a situation came up yesterday when we were watching some of the UFC prelims on television. I think it was UFC 255. It was whatever Shevchenko was on recently. But on the undercard, there was a fight, and at the end of the first round, something weird happened, and it looked like the guy was kind of hurt maybe, and then the guy was raining down some punches on him. The guy that won was Brandon Moreno, and after that, you realize really quickly, like, oh, his shoulder had dislocated. And I wanted to ask you about this because you're the only person that I know that tried to, like, put their shoulder back into socket in the middle of a match once. So maybe, should they stop a match? Should you get a chance to put your shoulder back in or nah?
So if someone's shoulder dislocates,
it dislocated
not
in the
MMA.
match.
Like if you can't, MMA is different than say like boxing, right? Where there's an 8 count, because you've seen that 8 count guy gets his shoulder put back in, they keep going. There's places to stop. But
well, there was only like 5 seconds left in the round when
they shouldn't stop
happened.
It for the dislocation.
They didn't stop it for the dislocation. The guy was basically trying to put his shoulder back and land there, and the other guy, pretty much for 7 seconds straight, was just raining down punches.
Yeah, that should be stopped.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think it was egregious to stop, but it's just like, if you put your shoulder back in place, you can keep fighting just fine.
Yeah. You should be able to, like, I also don't think they should stop UFC fights if someone's arm is getting broken, right? It's like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
like, you can dislocate your arm and you can still fight the rest of the round.
Well, we were just talking about with, like, knees or whatever. It's like, you can get your ACL blown out.
Right.
And, like,
UFC is very strange when they're like, a ref gets to make the decision how bad that submission is.
Yeah.
Whether, his arm's broken. It's like, yeah, but I've popped my arm and you can keep fighting.
Usually they don't do it unless, like, somebody taps. Like, they'll let it go unless you tap.
I've seen a bunch of stoppages. Not a bunch. There's not a ton of arm bars.
So I know that the argument with arm bars specifically is, like, if you have a compound fracture, like, there can be a blood supply thing, and it can actually be like something where it's like, well, we had this much time to, like, save his arm from, like, compartment syndrome or something like that. Again, not a doctor. I mean,
right.
If at this point, if it's not clear.
Yeah. But jiu-jitsu, nope, keep going.
So I get that, but you guys remember whenever I think it was Herb Dean stopped the fight between Ben Askren and Robbie Lawler whenever
the
Askren
bulldog
had him in like a bulldog choke.
Well, you thought he was unconscious. That's why.
Well, he was unconscious.
I don't
if you watch it back.
I think he was. I've watched it a few times. I think he kind of snaps back in. It's hard to say.
I don't think that he
But I don't think that a referee should ever really stop a match from a choke.
I agree. We were watching this last time. It's like, he let that choke go way too long because he was clearly tapping, and then he went unconscious. It's like, well, better let him go out.
Yeah.
Better safe than sorry. It's a title
that.
fight. Let him go unconscious.
Yeah. It's way better just to go out than, like, to leave that, like, there could be. Like, you know, and then there's drama about it.
Chokes are so safe.
No. Yeah.
Which, speaking of taps that like are questionable, we watched a video. It was on Flow. It was from the No Gi Pans, but a guy gets caught in an armbar. Clearly taps
like 5,000 times.
And then when the guy lets him out of the armbar, he immediately like tries to like jump on a guillotine. And the referee is like, "No, man, you tapped." And then he acted like it was like a travesty or whatever. I always find that so bizarre because I don't understand. I've never tapped and been like, "I didn't tap," or like. I don't know. It's weird.
The referee even stopped it, right?
Yeah.
He even and then the guy tried to jump on it.
It was a brutal armbar.
Yeah.
I know exactly the video you're talking about. I've had it once where I was in a position and I went to like over grip and missed and did this a couple times and they stopped it. Like, you tapped. I was like, then I watched the video. I'm like, it clearly looked like my hand's doing this.
Like, yeah.
And I'm going for a grip.
Like gripping.
Like cross.
Yeah.
But I'm like, can't be mad at that.
No.
If your arm is doing this on someone's leg while
and
you're
I've
in a
seen
triangle.
that happen like in like things where it's like, you're going for a grip and it looks like it. But there's a difference between like frantically tapping and then like grabbing a grip, you know? Yeah. There's a big difference in that.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think what's funny to me is I think that there's a competitive aspect of somebody wanting to be like, no, I didn't tap. You know, because they just want to keep fighting. I understand motivation, but the most competitive people that I know, like, they don't want to say, like, they would never like tap and then be like, I didn't tap.
No,
right?
I don't understand that
It's very
mentality.
90s MMA fighter.
Yeah.
90s MMA fighter.
I feel like that happened all the time in the
It
UFC.
did.
Yeah.
early on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of fights
The
where
fake, like everything goes. It's like fake taps to keep going.
go back and watch like old tournaments or old MMA fights, and what happens is like after a submission occurs, there's like for some reason a crowd of people around, and then like somebody's talking, and then some guy walks up with like a tracksuit on, he's got papers in his hands, and they start like talking, and then slowly but surely of the crowd, like 1 or 2 people start dispersing at a time, and then it's just the fighters left, and you're like, are they gonna just fight again? And then they do, and yep.
Well,
You have had this happen recently in training where somebody kind of pretends to go to sleep from a choke, and then when you let them up because you thought they were out, then they start fighting back hard.
Yeah, in my instance, the guy like almost oversold it. Like Hollywood actor was like just completely like
so much respect.
like Pinocchio, and you cut the strings.
It's the best thing.
And then
ever.
as soon as I let go, he jumped back to life and started going crazy. That guy, it's a very
I know what you want to say.
It's very standard. It's very standard.
She's not a fan of the show.
Probably not.
Probably not. No.
Is it in the wrong language?
Yes.
Honing in there. But yeah, I don't know. Have you guys ever had that? Somebody pretend to go to sleep on you, or?
No, but I think it goes along the lines of people just being weird at the academy. Like someone just needs to pull them aside, right?
Yes.
This guy is a white belt. So, and this was because I got awful advice from a purple belt.
I'm not surprised.
So I'm going to go to the second role, which is justified by the first, is I took my belt off. I'm in mount, and I just start wrapping my belt around my opponent's neck and trying to choke him with my belt. And this is
just strangle it.
This was Scott in St. Louis,
Okay.
who is a joke, so it's hilarious. He's like, "What the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "So and so told me to do this." He's like, "Well," and that purple belt that told me to do. He's like, "Yeah, you can do that. Anything that works sounds good." But he was like a military guy.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's like a military guy
Yeah.
had been teaching teaching Marine self-defense for years. So if you had a knife in your pocket, he'd be okay with it.
He's that guy that's like, you know what? If the guy, you can't open closed guard, just dig your elbow into the thigh.
Yeah.
As hard as you can.
He also told me in a Kimura, you grind your elbow on their ribs.
On the ribs. Yep.
On
I know
your ribs
exactly
to
what you're
open-
talking about because
to
I
open
know
your
you
up.
did.
And I'm telling you, it's like I use a modification of it today. It still works. It's legal.
Yes.
But this, by the way, one, you shouldn't do it. Dick move.
Yes.
But
There's a
also,
difference.
it's super illegal.
Just being like a dick about it, yes. But that was the same guy who he was I remember there was a girl who had started training with us, and she's a blue belt. She's Brazilian, but she had taken 2 years off of jiu-jitsu and came back to it. She's like, I almost got my purple belt, but then I was like, life happened, and then she just started training again. And I was still like a white belt, and I would mess this girl up. Like I had just started training, and like I would mess her up in training, and she was just somebody that was having fun with it, coming back.
She was just happy that there was jiu-jitsu.
And she was,
and
yeah, and it
down in
was,
Missouri
and
at
like
the
there's
time.
another girl to train with, you know? And so he rolls with her, and I remember she gets done training and she's crying, and I didn't see the roll. She comes over to me crying, and I was like, what's wrong? She's like, man, that guy, she's like, I can't remember what he did, but he did something to her. And right before he did the move, he says, you're not going to like this to a female. And he's and
Amazing.
he's like, I thought she's
Amazing.
and she's crying. He's like, oh, she's a blue belt. Like I thought, you know, it's like, but you're a man that outweighs her and you're a higher rank. Like what was going through your brain that makes you that seem okay?
It's so funny because in my mind, I remember verbatim her saying that because I was right next to you. And her just crying.
What'd he do?
And just
I
saying,
can't even remember.
I know what he did.
What did he do?
He did this, what I was trying to describe to you the other night when we were laying in bed. So weird aside, but everybody in the podcast is getting in on this now. But no, I asked you, have you ever heard of the Saturday Night Ride?
It's also weird that this is a conversation in bed, but you know.
Because it's not really. After I describe it, you're going to be like, I get it. But it's not at all what it has to do with. The Saturday Night Ride is whenever you get in a mount and you like grapevine your opponent's legs and then like extend your hips down like how you would from mount to like straight, like you know when you have somebody's back mount and you straighten them out and flatten them out. you grapevine their legs and then do that so that it like hurts
Kind of
their
hurts
knees.
their like legs. Or,
Yeah. So that's what he did to her.
Oh.
And for anybody that's listened to this and they're like, that's called the Saturday Night Ride. I don't know. That's what he called it.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I felt really bad for her. And that guy shows a lot of things. He's actually a very sweet human, but
Yeah.
his
he's amazing. He's a great person.
etiquette was not great.
I mean, he's literally been living in the desert,
Yeah.
training people to kill people for the past 15
Yes.
years.
Yeah.
He's tame. He's tame.
This is true. This is true.
For the environment he comes
This
from.
is very true.
And I think that's where you have to forgive people that like learn jiu-jitsu early on. Like jiu-jitsu's gotten better or whatever. It's like if you see somebody and they're teaching something and they, learned it a long time ago and now there's a better version of it, you don't go like, why is that person so dumb? You go, they just don't know no better.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was this situation.
Jenna, I have a question for you. What percentage of schools have good female jiu-jitsu etiquette? That makes sense.
I honestly don't know because, like, I don't know. But I hear so many stories from women when they come train with me or just talking about training in general, like, that they've had really bad experiences because the guys don't know. Or, like, a lot of women who tried jiu-jitsu and didn't stick with it because they were in a bad environment. So I think even inside the academy, like we have great etiquette at our school. And like I've always had that, like, because I was around and like everybody kind of helped me through everything. And I kind of like me being there and being a tough, like training partner, the guys kind of like learned how to manage that. Maybe I kind of trained everybody around me how to like deal with women. I don't know. That sounds weird, but I think that there's always going to be certain people that just don't understand how to like roll with women in a way that's like tough, but like respectful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a 250 blue belt, 250-pound blue belt. It's like he might see a female black belt that's 110 pounds. Like, I better go ham.
Yes.
Because she's a black belt.
Yes.
It's like she's a 110-pound woman first.
Yes.
And then a black belt second.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, yeah, she's still going to beat you, but there's a good chance you're going to hurt her in the process.
Yes, because it's
by
like
you moving some crazy direction.
Just doing something with your, like throwing your body on top of me in a weird way or whatever. And so that's for that reason, I think I always tell girls too, like, it's don't train with other white belt men. Like, be careful with the white belts you train with because they have less control of their body or they don't know what they're doing as much. You're always safer rolling with higher belts. If you're going into a gym that you're visiting or if you're open mat and you're worried about that, always like try and roll with higher level people because it's going to be a safer training for you, even if you're getting messed up more. But I think that it depends on the professor and how respectful he is of women in general. Because I think the professor of the academy sets the tone for everyone else. And if there's like this, like, women are kind of like, whatever, then guys either like roll too soft where they just are kind of like treating you like a child.
Where you see that too.
Yeah.
I would say like over time you can kind of find these women that have been promoted up to like a certain belt because you've had a chance to do camps and seminars in a lot of places, and sometimes it's like, how is this woman a
there's
purple belt
always that narrative
scale,
like they're good for a girl. Like that's like the narrative, and so I think that makes it a big difference of like, is your professor actually taking you seriously, like in a way of like looking at you as like a student, or they're like, this is a female that is probably like they judge you on a different.
We're good people for allowing her to train.
Yes. I feel like that's exactly how some people think about it. Like I've seen that happen before, but I mean, I've been lucky that I've been in academies where that's not the case.
I steal our old rule of like, you move for black belts and you move for women, right? And it's like, and I feel like that helps a lot of students. Like, hey,
I adjusted his mic. You're welcome.
But it's like, hey, their safety is a priority in this space.
Yeah.
Just because it's like a higher likelihood of injury. So.
Yes. I think that's a good way to think about it, is like making the safety of like, but you should do that anytime you're training, right? It's like, I should be looking out for the safety of my training partner.
Right.
You know, if we're both cognizant of that, then everybody's going to be
and
safe.
That comes top down.
Yes.
It really does.
Yes.
Comes top down.
Yeah. Sure. And I know that whenever you've gone and taught, like, and even women that have, like, relocated and started training with you, like, some of them will say, like, I don't feel like I'm actually this belt or whatever. And partially it's because they've been in an academy where the guys all sort of, like, big brother them, you know, where it's, like, no real resistance. So you don't know what it's like when, like, you have a woman, like, fight tooth and nail against you and, like, the fight defend something off, you know? And I think that that's, you know, like, that's a lesson that guys get early on. Like, even as, like, a blue belt or purple belt, you roll some white belt that's, like, 100 pounds heavier, athletic, and next thing you know, you're like, really why is none of these moves working? It's like, yeah, it's tougher against somebody that's like that. You're going to have to learn that. You know?
I think that's, like, a something that has to happen a lot where you had, well, for me, it was the opposite where I'm like, I got really tough training. Everybody took good care of me, but nobody treated me like a child. They all, like, rolled with me hard. And that was good. But then I was like, because I was dying, I'm like, I really just want to feel like what a female, like, black belt feels like. This is, like, my goal. Because it's just, I know training with other women feels different. So, like, what does it feel like when they're at the highest level? And I think when I was a blue belt, I got that experience, but not really, because she was injured. So we were kind of flowing, but it still felt good. And then when I finally got to train with, like, I was like a brown belt by the time and I was like, oh no, like, okay, I'm on the right path. Like, I can hang with these girls, like, because it kind of just, like, reassured me that I was actually good, not just, like.
Which, it's crazy to me, like, kind of, it's like I live that life with you, but it's like now, thinking about being a competitive female brown belt and having never really trained with a female black belt before.
Crazy.
Like, it's a crazy thought now,
crazy
right?
Thought,
yeah. But it's also one of those things where I think there's a lot of people, like, we came from the Midwest. There was, like, one black belt, like, in every, like, 1,000 miles.
Yeah,
like,
purple belts were teaching people Saturday night rides. It was a crazy time.
So, like, training, there's a lot of people who still haven't trained with, like, a black belt. Even, like, having a black belt professor. I see a lot of people like, oh, I haven't even rolled with my professor.
How many times, you know, like, have you done a seminar or trained with somebody and they're like, this is the first time I ever trained with a black belt
happens
before.
all the time.
Yeah, especially when you're in the small towns, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. In San Diego, that's would be hard to find, I think.
Yeah.
But I remember.
I try to tell people that. It's like, hey, it's like, this isn't, San Diego's not standard. It's like you walk in, there's 8 black belts on the mat. That's very unusual.
Yeah, it is very unusual. And I think it's probably, like, it gives everybody that perspective of, like, there's the greatest disparity between skill levels sometimes is at black belt because there is a big difference. But, like we were talking about earlier, where it's like, oh, she's good for a girl. And I think it's the first time I've ever heard put it this way, but I think I'm going to steal it from you and use it all the time now. And that's like, she's a 110-pound woman first, and then she's a black belt. Because it's like, you know, there's black belts that I'm sure you've trained with before where it's like the guy's 58 or something, you know? And it's like, yeah, he's a black belt, and he's maybe been a black belt way longer than I have, but I'm not about to give him, like, tournament-style jiu-jitsu. I'm about to be, like, as flowy and soft as I can, just out of respect for the fact that it's like, that's a lot of miles on the body.
Right, for sure. For sure. It can get you in trouble, though, right?
Yeah.
So, definitely true.
Gets you in trouble.
I was like, oh, this story.
I've got a story. So I was, that guy was probably a 4 or 5 stripe black belt, which to people that don't know jiu-jitsu, it's like, oh, he must be really good.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're really old. That's what that means.
It's true.
Right?
It's
when
true.
you have tons of stripes, it means you've been training for a really long time. So I'm like, okay, I'll just pull half guard. I'll just move around, try some different stuff. And immediately I was like, got behind, and he slowly passed my guard in a very master's way. And then,
just like,
then I'm stuck in side control. I'm like, it's like, he is just so tight. I was like, once I get out of here, it's like, you are getting no inches from now on. Huge mistake.
You cannot make those mistakes.
But that type of person is rare. It's like, it's much better.
Yeah.
I'll always be, it's like, so I got beat up 1 round of 1 roll.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's better than just throttling everyone you see that's 60 years old and you hurting lots of people.
Yeah.
Right, Tyler?
You don't always have to, like...
Right. Sorry for all those times I hurt you. Emotionally.
Tyler is that old man.
Psychologically, I made you think about all the pain that you caused me and psychological harm to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's like, especially now at black belt, like those times when you're rolling with somebody that's 20-year plus black belt or something like that, or just really really seasoned. You really learn to appreciate like just that level of skill. Like I've said, I think I'm on record saying this. The worst I've ever been beaten up by somebody as a black belt in the most like kind of masterful way was Lovato Jr.
Yeah.
And this was probably 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm sure I've improved. But I remember just at the time thinking like it's his base, it's his pressure. Like he feels like almost impossible to move because even against a really skilled guy, you can make a mistake and you can be like, if I need an inch, I'll get an inch. You know, like I need to bump just a little bit so I can get my knee in here. With him, it was like, I need to bump a little bit. And now, well, he's further along now. So
yeah, it only got worse.
But like, that's the takeaway I always have is just like those guys, they always just feel like it's like moving a building. Doesn't matter if they're 150 pounds or 250 pounds. They just feel super, super solid. I don't know if you guys have had the same experience or not.
I mean, yeah.
Every
time I roll with Johnny.
It just depends.
It really does. It just depends.
Yeah. For me, that happens quite often. This person's very strong and very tight.
Well, we were talking about strength earlier, and I'm actually really curious. And don't name names if it's like a famous person and it's a competitive thing. You're like, I don't want to say this guy's the strongest guy I ever trained with. But who is like when somebody that you've trained with, or like, do you remember an experience where you were like, this guy might be the strongest, most athletic person I've ever trained with?
So jiu-jitsu is very odd because your athleticism is always behind techniques. So those lines blur a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like someone can multiply how strong they are by having the right grips in the right place with the right pressure.
Yeah.
Right. So it's hard to say. I've never felt someone's like, it's like
overwhelming.
No one's overwhelming. And usually the people who are, I'm like, man, this guy's explosive, is usually a blue belt that doesn't know what they're doing. So they're just exploding all over the place.
Yes.
It's like, wow, you're really athletic. Let me tone you down a bit.
Yeah.
There's been people that are really tough to move, I'd say is the most where you can feel someone's strength. Lovato's hard to move. Shanji's hard to move. Lucas Barbosa's really hard to move. It's like where you pull on his collar. And
a guy named the Hulk?
Guy named the Hulk. Yeah, you pull on his collar, you're like, well, I need to manipulate him first before you can just break posture or something like that. And
gotcha, how I feel all the time.
So by the way, all 3 world champions, right? So, but rarely, I've never been kind of, it's like, this guy's too much, right?
I've told the story, I think, on an earlier podcast, so I won't revisit. But actually, the most overwhelming guy I've ever trained with was not much heavier than me at the time. And he was a white belt, and I think it was his first class.
Yeah.
He was an NCAA All-American, but he was just – I remember I had him in a triangle, and he grabbed my neck when we were in a triangle and just started squeezing, and I just almost went unconscious. I had to use every bit of my strength to push him off of me while I had him in a triangle, just so that I didn't go unconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
And I think that's probably where it comes. It's like I played a low-level collegiate football, right? Division II. And those guys are athletic.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In my opinion. It's
and a lot bigger than you. Like
way bigger, way stronger. It's like, I remember.
Just too stupid to play Division I. Really the only thing.
Slight jab because I'm in there, right? So I'm too short.
You were just too short.
Too short. 5'11".
You're too small.
Can't be a 5'11" linebacker.
There's a lot of physical and mental discrepancies that would cause you to be in the Division II. But continue.
But I remember it's like when we were doing like max out week for bench. It's like my 3 lifting partners were doing 425, 455, and 415.
God.
Right? So it's like, and that's bench press. That's just like, it's like, that is
gotcha, my squat PR.
Stupid strong. It's too much weight. Right? And so, and there might not be anyone in jiu-jitsu that does that.
Yeah.
Right? It's like maybe. but that's just so much weight.
But if they are that big and that athletic, they probably have chosen a sport that is like more lucrative than jiu-jitsu.
And they might not be able to, because to be good at jiu-jitsu, you have to learn to put that stuff behind you.
Yeah.
And learn it without it, and then you can add it back later. Which that's why you don't see tons of D1
There's a lot
athletes.
more finesse in
Athletic
jiu-jitsu.
guys don't stick around because their ego can't handle it. So
yeah,
it's like why there's so many developers and IT guys at jiu-jitsu. So they're used to solving things with their head.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. I never thought about that way. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, I do think that there is. I mean, the guy that I'm talking about, this white belt, he did that class, and then Rocky, who owned the gym next door, Rocky was a collegiate wrestler, a good one, and Rocky had sent the guy over, and I was like, that guy's the most athletic guy I've ever trained with, man. And he's like, oh yeah, how'd he do? And I'm like, I mean, it took me all of the round to basically take him over the top, and as he was standing up with me in his hands, I armbarred him, and that was the roll before he almost choked me unconscious from a triangle I had him in. So that's how it went. He's amazing. And he's like, oh yeah, he said he didn't do very good, and he didn't really like it. And I just remember being like, I've never seen someone do better, other than you, like initially, in terms of just like
first day.
Because I was teaching a beginner class, and he was, after I rolled with him, I was like, man, that guy's a handful. I let him roll with, this is not going to, 5 people are going to, this is Chaz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Chaz was like a white belt at the time, and I just remember him choking Chaz out over and over again when Chaz had him in closed guard.
Poor Chaz.
Yeah, and I just was like, I can't let this guy roll with anybody else, so I have to roll with him again. So I spent the rest of that round just like basically catching my breath, And I was like, man, I can't believe that, he felt like he wasn't good at it. But I think you're right about that. Like, jiu-jitsu is that sport that no matter how athletic you are, you show up on day one and you're not good at it.
Right.
Yeah.
And even like even if he is that good, for him to get past blue belt, he's got to learn to not use any of it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's why you see so many athletic blue belts, right? Just like, and then they disappear.
I remember like JW telling me that like when just talking about my progression and things that I needed to work on. And he's like, you need to stop relying so much on your athleticism for you to like progress. And I was like, oh, I think that's stupid. But at the time, that's what I thought. But now I'm like, no, that's like smart because you do like me trying to be more like stronger and more athletic than most of my training partners are guys. Like this is not going to work out well for me. Like I'm going to do good to a certain point, but I'm like, I can't fight strength with strength when I'm rolling with a bigger, stronger opponent. So
I also remember at Purple Belt, I think Jeff Glover told you that you were working on your high guard arm bars, which you're really good at, and your legs are super strong, so you were able to climb up and do it. And I remember him telling you, like, yeah, I'm sure you're doing that to tons of girls now, but you're not going to be able to do that when you get to black belt.
I've done it at every belt and still do.
He was also like 8 hours late, so...
Shout out to Jeff Glover.
Shout out to Jeff Glover.
Which I think, given the opportunity, Jeff would just be like, all right, so I'm wrong sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't care.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting. So you've never rolled with a guy like just like a white belt or something that you're like, wow, this guy's got...
I mean, for sure that they're just really athletic or really strong. But I think I feel like I'm usually, when I have success, it's usually where people think they're stronger. It's like, nope, it's jiu-jitsu today.
But what about Andrew Sanchez?
Andrew Sanchez is he's in the UFC now. We went to the same college, and he was an All-American there wrestler. For some background, people know.
Also won the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah. So we're training and we're doing no-gi takedowns. And one time he shot a single, and I was able to kick out of it or sprawl or something. And when I get back up and I keep going, and he looked at me like he saw a ghost. Like he's never missed a single leg in his life. I've never been more terrified.
Yeah.
So, but he was freaky good wrestler, really good. And one of the strongest mental players I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like every time I would submit him, he would just, it's like, we're rolling again. Again.
I remember like seeing him do that like to you guys. I'm like, we're all done, and like, why? Like
I packed my stuff up and took my gi off, man. We're leaving.
Yeah, rolling. Just like, thank God I don't know. We weren't always in the gi. We do a lot of no gi stuff too.
Yeah,
but
Also, probably the sweatiest guy I've ever met.
Impressive.
Yes,
Impressive.
Yes.
He's like,
He started jump roping to warm up, and there's like 3 pounds of sweat.
Man,
on
I
the
know a
floor
lot of guys
underneath
that
him.
got like that are that sweaty guy.
have I told you when we went to Texas? So I'm competing in this like this 3-man round robin
I
tournament
remember
or something.
I was supposed to go.
You were supposed to go and JW was supposed to go. You both last me like,
I was like, man, I don't want to go to this. And JW looked at me and he goes, we're not going. And I was like, yeah.
So now
Dad
it's just
said we're not going.
now it's just me going down there, and I'm like, well, I needed somebody to compete with, so I call Andrew. I was like, hey man, I've got this tournament. I was like, if we win $5,000 between the 3 of us. Like, how much you weigh in right now? He's like, man, I went out last night. He's like, I weigh like 208, 209, something around there. I was like, don't worry about it. He's like, well, how much is the weight? I go, man, it's too much tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Said, how much is the weight? I go, 185. Because I can do it. It's like,
What he heard you say was, there's no way you'll ever make that weight. I don't believe that you can, and you never will, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
So
So, like-
I'm going to get off the phone
so
now.
like 23 pounds in a day, and you compete right after you weigh in, and then put Andrew saying, and we have to drive to Texas. We have to be driving for 15 of those hours. All right. He made the weight.
Did he cut before you guys got in the car, or like when you guys got there,
He
or both? Probably.
he was cutting all the way down, and I remember Grant was the other person. It was a white belt.
A white belt.
A white belt in an all black belt tournament because I needed a third person.
Like 2 out of 3, we got this.
2 out of 3, we'll just win all the matches, and it
Yep.
won't matter what Grant does. And then
Poor Grant.
Grant's going through what he got. He's gonna win a third of $5,000 if he
Yeah,
did it. So he
yeah.
doesn't care. But he's going through. He stops at a Whataburger drive-through. Andrew was so mad at him. So Andrew's trying to cut 20 pounds, and he's in a drive-through at Whataburger.
You guys want anything? Like water?
Yeah. More cutting weight.
That's awesome. And you guys won, right?
No, we didn't.
No,
Took second.
Second.
Took second. Yeah.
Yep.
Close enough.
Bitter. I'd be super pissed if I thought like another black belt was going to come and help me with that tournament, and then
Yeah.
they didn't come.
It's all right.
You know, that
It's-
kind of
it was a
format
fun
is fun
trip.
though. Like
It was
the
cool. It was a
team
cool
events.
format. Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Um,
Yeah, recently Fight to Win did that, and you were able to compete on it, and I thought it was really cool. And I was like, I'd be willing to compete again for something like that. And I actually said it would be the only thing I didn't like is that it required you to be on the same association.
Mhm.
But like, and I know that they don't want to have like super teams or whatever, because that does make it sort of unfun. But like, I was thinking at the time, like us three, like we hit each of the weight classes and stuff like that people
And
that
gender
they were using
requirements.
gender requirements.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that'd be super fun. Just like,
you could do it with a like some type of skill cap, either IBGF points or something like that. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like you can only have this many high ranked people. So if you do have a world champion, the other people have to be completely unranked or something like that.
yeah. And I think
We qualify.
What's
Yeah.
that?
We
We
qualify.
do qualify.
qualify. Yeah. A very niche specific type of qualifications that allow us to all three compete together. But
Well, this is perfect for me because I can fit in and I haven't competed in forever. So I am
Yes.
completely unranked.
Okay, so
So-
we're gonna do it.
I'm game. We're going to build a tournament
We're gonna make a tournament.
around what first
Well,
and
the
last three
last
can
time,
be
the
in
last time they did Subversive, he's like, they did kind of. It was a no-gi one, and they allowed for like a couple of like random teams to get together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we could just say that you're not like affiliated with anyone,
Change for a day.
and then that's
Change
fine.
today.
Yeah. Talk to Johnny Solo. We can work it out.
We'll get a lawyer
we'll
involved.
figure it out.
Get a lawyer.
We'll have
involved.
some emails sent.
There
Make
you
it
go.
official.
There you go.
One thing we were talking about before the show a little bit that I thought was interesting, and we didn't specifically steal this subject from you from a previous podcast because we were on a hike and you brought it up as something that I thought was interesting, and that is the conversations that you dislike having at jiu-jitsu. Obviously, it's
Mhm.
post-election here in the U.S., and it is the mess that everybody thought it would be. But we were talking a little bit about it at the time, and you're like, man, is there anything that makes you like more uncomfortable immediately whenever somebody starts talking like politics at jiu-jitsu? And not just normal politics, but they're extreme
Yes.
on one end or the other.
Yeah. It is the worst. And it was coming off pretty fresh because I think after the hike, I had just got done with an open mat. After open mat, I was sitting around talking, right, about probably starts with specific technique. Someone has a question. And it's like, hey, COVID's crazy, right? And then you'll keep talking, but you just got to stay away from all those subjects because there's always that one guy who's just like, yeah, Bill Gates is putting microchips in all these vaccines and he's taking over the world. It's like
I don't want to get into conspiracy.
I don't know about that. And then
he's like, the human world, most of them are lizards.
Yeah.
And you're like, damn, lizard guy?
I feel like, Tyler, the birds aren't real. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, look into it, I guess. But I did find a subreddit at one point where people believe, and this is a real thing, people believe that giraffes aren't real. Like, that they're just, like, tall horses? Or, like a zebra?
That's
like a broken zebra?
But, like, how do they think it's not real then? Because it's still an animal.
I think they
Have you ever seen a giraffe?
Yeah, I fed them.
Have you
So those are robots.
Rode a giraffe.
I didn't ride it. I fed it at a zoo.
You opened it up to an autonomy. So how do you know?
I don't know.
So what
But
boggles
if
my
they're
mind?
going to say it's just a tall zebra or whatever.
I'm just asking questions. Just asking questions.
So what boggles my mind is I remember reading like a thread about this at one point, and somebody was like trying to disprove it. And one of the comments was, "It's not that I don't believe that giraffes ever existed. It's that I don't believe that there are any more now." And I thought, what a weird like concession to say that like giraffes aren't real. That I don't know what the motivation of the conspiracy would be. I mean, that's
what's the point?
It is a complete another subject. But that they were real, and now it's like big giraffe is like perpetrating this conspiracy.
What do you
like maybe
think?
they were dinosaurs and they went extinct?
Well, I mean,
and now we've just recreated.
I think you got to assume this guy thinks dinosaurs are real, which I think is a pretty far reach at this point.
That's true. That's true.
That's a thing.
How do you think those conversations are at the LA 10th Planet Eddie Bravo School?
I would say
all the conspiracy theories.
Not just conspiracy theories.
Just like
those have to be commonplace. But what conversations
like after
go
jiu-jitsu,
too far?
Yeah.
I think it's just like it becomes like that sort of conspiracy is just like common knowledge there, where you just assume everybody else is into it.
Yeah.
But that is another one of those conversations you don't really like having at jiu-jitsu.
But I think that people would probably, if you're in that environment, when you know like Eddie's such a conspiracy theorist and he kind of has these like crazy views on things, and like everybody kind of just buys in because it's your professor, you just assume everybody thinks something's crazy, but there's always going to be some guy that takes it to the next level, like of like crazy, where you're like, that's even too much for us guys. Like, you know, I can't handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, clearly, I think it's one of those things where it's like you start talking to somebody after practice, and they're like, "Yeah, it reminds me of the deep state," and you're like, "Ah, man, like, is there any other way I can get out of this conversation like as fast as possible?" Because it is one of those things where it's like we were actually talking about right before the podcast came on, where it's like there's a lot of people in jiu-jitsu that you probably never have any relationship to or like interaction with if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, but because of jiu-jitsu, you might see the only good side of an overall not great person.
Yeah, that happens a lot. And there's been people that we've been like really close with, like friends, and then you kind of start getting them, get to know them a little bit
them outside
of the academy, and you're like, wait a minute.
Oh, you hate black people. Oh.
Yeah, like what? Yeah. Also, like you've been
still
want to
like them, but
too many times, so it's bringing out your racism.
You're talking about black people or the guy?
You're terrible.
No, but like I think that is the thing where it's like you start to get to know somebody, and then
you realize that like they're Googling like how to fake your own death so you can get out of paying child support.
That's true.
All right, that guy's amazing. He's one of my favorites.
I thought you were gonna be like, first of all, like we didn't know it was my kid to start with.
The stories and the best part about him is like we were close enough friends with him that we got to hear his rationality behind all of it.
You get to like hear his thought
honestly
process
considering moving to
smuggling
Russia.
Cars
so
from
for
Pakistan.
those that are home that are like, oh, so you got his side of the story of like how you wanted to fake a death and avoid child support?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
I mean, I understand.
I'm kind of on his side.
Like, it was a one night stand and she tricked him.
Yeah,
okay? She tricked him.
She tricked him. He should move to Russia.
And smuggle cars from
It's
Pakistan.
a classic baby swerve.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is something in jiu-jitsu where it's like you could roll with a doctor and then roll with a criminal and then roll with a cop, and on the mat, like everybody is sort of equal. And then you become friends with those people on Facebook, and you're like, dang, he's in the KKK? I had no idea.
Yeah.
You know what? There were signs.
Yeah.
That is one thing, though, that I do kind of feel like this has happened. And this is like kind of, there's been kids that I'm like, I don't want to teach you jujitsu. But you start to learn about a person and you're like, I don't think you're a good person. Like, I don't think that teaching you jujitsu is responsible.
Yeah, but at that point,
Oh, you talking about
you've already
fire
been
for
teaching.
6 months.
You talking about Fire's kid?
What?
Yeah, I'm even lost.
That kid that's always starting fires.
Oh, no, just the kid that's punching kids in the face on the mat
Yeah.
because they're angry.
With that, with those questions, do you guys get a bunch of, because I could only imagine, like the couples questions you get. Like, when you guys go home, do you guys just do jiu-jitsu all night? How do you solve problems?
The first thing everybody always asks us is like, if you guys like fought for real, who would win? And I'm like,
I messed that bitch up. Believe that.
It's not true.
We figured it out.
You've seen. It's not true.
People that listen to this podcast know that you choked me unconscious in a garage when we were alone during the pandemic.
Yeah,
so.
and Moose is the first person I've ever choked unconscious. So
Twice.
this is 2 of the 3 that I've choked
One was
unconscious.
my fault, one was hers.
But yeah, that is always the first question. You're right. We get the same questions, and
I had somebody over the pandemic sending me messages, and I thought I was only like nice to this person because they like am responding to them because they said that they trained at Alliance before, but they're like in a different state now. And so I was like, oh, like, they were, one of Johnny's students or something. And then I asked Johnny and he didn't know who he was. So I was like, dang it. I'm talking to this person.
I got creepered.
Yes. But he asked me like, and this is the weirdest question I think I've gotten, is because it was like posting during the pandemic, Tyler and I rolling in the garage and things like that. And he asked me if us rolling ever turned into something sexual. Like we just like, have we ever had sex on the mats?
I've never had that question.
Yeah. And I'm like,
He asked you that? A guy asked you that?
A guy asked me that about like me and my husband having sex on the mats. And I was like, no, like there's like, number one, I hope that when I train with men, like there's nothing ever sexual thought because we're fighting. I'm trying to hurt you. You should be trying to defend yourself and hurt me. Maybe. But like, I'm like, especially with my husband, like that's not, if we're rolling, this is a very different mindset than us being like intimate with each other.
And
it's weird. Yeah. But he said he had a fantasy about like doing it with his significant
How well did
other.
You know this person?
I don't know them. I don't know them.
That is really creepy.
It's really creepy. And also I'm like, I'm not talking to you about my sex life with my husband. Like, that's weird.
Yeah, and what's weird, even stranger to me, is like I've never had that question from like guys at jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't know if it's just out of respect or they're like, I don't want to ask this guy this question, or they're just uninterested. But like I've rolled with tons of females or whatever, and it's like, it's just like normal rolling. There's no thought of that whatsoever. The only time that I've ever rolled with a woman been like cognizant of like, oh, this is a woman and like I want to be careful not to be inappropriate here, is when I remember taking the back of a woman that had fake boobs, like really big fake boobs, and I like couldn't choke her, and I was like just trying to get my hands in, and I couldn't.
It's like when you go to put like your seatbelt on, like there's your hands are either like on her face or like on her stomach.
Performance enhancing.
Yeah. Well, she was super hard to choke because of that. And I kept trying to get my hand in. I'm like, at some point, I'm just like groping her. So I'm like, I guess I just won't choke her. I'm going to switch to armbar.
And that's something that goes away after, like, because I remember, like, people that try jiu-jitsu for like the first day or so, like, they're uncomfortable because they're not used to being this close to someone unless it's
you put them
like
in close guard and they like stick their hands
Yeah.
up like they're being arrested, where you put them in close guard and they're like, oh.
Yeah, it's like, I don't. It's like, yeah, it's like the first time somebody rides a motorcycle. It's like, no, you're gonna have to reach around them, or you're gonna fall off the back.
Yes, you have to hug them.
Yes, it's like that's gay. I ain't hugging nobody. It's like, well, you're gonna get a lot of concrete on your back. So.
Yeah, so I would say we get that question a lot. Like, what happens when you guys like really spar or whatever? because I remember you've done interviews. We did one for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch after you won the Worlds, and the reporter like couldn't believe because we were just like flow rolling.
Yeah,
and I
you
was,
were like giving me stuff, like setting me up to like look good
for the photographer, and he like was like, "Wow, like this woman's just kicking your ass," and I was just like, "Well, you know, like I'm letting her because it's a thing," and he's like, "Yeah, just she's so much better."
But you also don't let me like win when we're rolling either anymore.
Yeah, and I think
like,
that's where I forgive guys that like are not great at training with women because you know I always tell people that are always like, "Wow, Jenna's like really good. Like I tried my best and she's still kicking my ass or whatever." I'm always like, "Yeah," because for me, there's like I'm doing the best I can technically. But like I don't put my weight. I'm not trying to like use any of my physical advantages to like to gain an edge in the match.
Yeah.
And if I don't, then you're probably beating me, you know? But the second I start to like cross that border there, you know, then it starts to be like unfair, like kind of what we were talking about earlier when you were talking about like she's a 110-pound girl 1st. It's like, well, I'm 40 pounds heavier and you know, like I feel like there's a difference between male and female strength. You've said this before.
I always say that women, like when you're training with women, their strength, like most of the time when girls feel strong, like a female feels strong, it's like a rigid strength. Like I don't know how to explain it other than that, where it's like they very like rigid strong versus a guy just feeling like overwhelming strong. And then there are women I've trained with that are like strong that feel more like men. And like when I've had like I always take it as a compliment when like a guy tells me like you're really strong, like I have to treat you like a dude because you are strong, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. I'll get annoyed with you and be mad sometimes, but just hold it in.
I'll hear
it comes
about
out
it in the car
and I
ride
just
home.
talk to Tyler and let all that out. But
yeah, because it's almost when people say that it's because we disassociate technique from athletics. When people are saying we think because they're calling us strong that they're diminishing what we're actually doing.
Yeah, which I saw this posted. I think it was Mike Columbus posted something about like, is that even a compliment if like after you get done rolling with somebody and they're like, man, you're really strong. Like, is that even a compliment?
It's not.
No,
to me, it's not.
And you know what's funny is like I don't have that occurrence a lot, and never really have. Although the one time that I did was when I had one of the strangest reactions I've ever seen. Somebody that we know very closely, but they were like, "Well, you're beating me so well because you're so strong and athletic." And I'm like, "Well, I'm also a black belt," and I think I was like a white or blue belt at the time.
He was a white belt,
and you could just tell like it burned him. And I was like, "You're more athletic than me, dude." You know, but
and the same size.
But I've seen people do it to you specifically. Nick, I point at for those that are not watching. But I've seen people like be like, well, he's just really strong or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but that's not why he ruined you.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's why your gi's ripped right now.
Yeah.
But
that's and it hasn't happened much after. But up till black belt, I ripped everybody.
You ruined a lot of gis.
You ripped my very first gi ever.
Yeah, I ripped a gi. It's not laterally on the lapel.
On the lapel, yeah.
On the lapel in a tournament.
It's like ripping a phone book in half. Like you think about a lapel, and you think if you took a pair of scissors and then just like cut it diagonally, like horizontally across the middle. That's what this guy's gi was afterwards. And I remember him coming up to me because I'd known the guy from a long time because he's from across the state. He's like, "What are you feeding this guy? Check my collar out."
Wasn't that the tournament in St. Louis?
Yeah,
where I was with Joey the night before. Is that same one?
I don't remember.
I don't know what you were doing with Joey the night before.
No, we were out. Remember, I ran into Joey at like 4 a.m.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me.
I don't remember that story.
Okay, well, someone was hosting a tournament, and I was supposed to compete the next day. It was one of JW's tournaments.
Yeah.
And it was in St. Louis. And then Joey told me, it's like, where's Nick? He's supposed to compete in like half an hour. And Joey's like, man, I saw him out. And he was not slowing down. And then I came, and then I competed the next day. I think it was the same tournament.
I feel like I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, it's not a great story, so I don't want to dive into it. I'm giving like high level details because it's basically I drank the night before and I competed and won a tournament. That's basically it. Ripped a guy's gi. So
Drinking makes you stronger.
yeah, I guess. It was awful. I don't recommend it at all. It does not make tournaments fun. Being hungover is like the worst time to train jiu-jitsu.
Sometimes you train better. Sometimes you'll show up that next day.
I
And
don't. Yeah, not that day.
Nah, yeah.
You still won though.
Still won.
It's happened enough times to where you're like, maybe today's that day. I'm gonna just like train unbelievable, and then you go and you're like, I feel terrible. Why am I here?
Yeah.
But I think
Sweat it out. That's why you're there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we've all rolled with that person too. That it's like you start training with them, and you're like, you smell like you just took a bath and rubbing alcohol. Like,
How-
I think that's happened with Joey several times.
yeah, Joey
Training with Joey.
specifically.
Oh,
Yeah.
alcohol. I thought you meant the people that smell like just acid because there's ghee
The
stinks.
ghee smells.
yeah,
no.
that's a different thing.
That's very different, and that's disturbing. That's the worst.
Yeah.
I don't mind if you smell like weed or alcohol when I'm training with you because it's whatever.
Yeah.
But when your gi smells because it's dirty
Mhm.
and it's like ammonia smell from like the sweat that it was old in your
because
gi.
you're gonna make me smell. Like if somebody's
Yes.
like,
and then I'm not the smelly guy. It was that guy, and it's on me.
Yeah.
You have to explain yourself.
yeah,
I've retired a lot of geese just because one person's like, oh, ghee kind of stinks. Like,
And
Yeah,
you can-
you had one that smelled real bad for a minute.
that's my favorite ghee though. So
I
I
know.
couldn't retire it.
yeah. I had
You
one-
even got it embroidered after it smelled.
No.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
You maybe did.
Probably. I was 19. Sounds like something I
I didn't know no better.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like,
What
you,
does she know?
you'll
She's
trick
just
your-
jealous how cool this ghee is.
you trick yourself into thinking that like that ghee is fine too, because you'll get it washed and you're like, it has a faint kind of funk to it.
Yeah.
But then the second it gets wet, just
Yeah,
a
it's
drop
still
of
wet.
sweat, it's like
Yeah.
takes it to a 10.
It like releases it.
yeah,
Yes.
Like
really opens it up. Really causes it to bloom. You know.
The worst gi ever, the smelliest guy was a guy that we trained with that was, I think, a white or blue belt in St. Louis, but he was rather large, overweight, out of shape, and
I
he
know who you're
would
talking about.
There's the
wad
worst.
his gi up after training and throw it in his trunk and then not wash it and then get the same gi out, still damp, and roll in it again.
I told him, I was like, dude, you're, and I didn't know he was doing that. But I
Mhm.
was like, man, there's something with this. I was like, you need to change your washing detergent or something.
Yeah, it was the perfect storm because he's that guy that like has a natural not great smell anyways, and then he's like throwing his gi in the trunk
Well,
of his car
if he
in the
is doing
summer
that
in
with his
Missouri.
skis, he's probably not washing
He
his
doesn't
body
train
and
anymore, does
or.
he? I doubt
I
it.
don't
No,
think so.
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, he had interesting smell to say the least. But it
It
was,
was
one of
the
the worst.
It was the worst.
Because
I've ever
it took
smelled.
over the whole academy. Like when he was rolling,
Yeah,
you
and I'd
could
tell
smell
him.
it
I'd tell
from
him
everywhere.
every time because
You did?
I assumed
You
no
probably
one
had to
else
roll with
did.
him a lot because
Well,
he was big.
He was big.
Yeah.
He was probably 50 pounds more than me.
Yeah.
and I was like the biggest guy there.
And that's the best way to do it is like to just grab somebody one on one, like just be like, "Hey man, are you washing your gi?" And usually somebody will be like, "Oh yeah," and you're like, it's,
Yeah,
I,
I
was
told
like,
him
you
every
need to make
time.
sure you wash your gi every class, man. You need to make sure you wash your gi every class.
I wash my gi even like if I just teach a class and I don't train, I still wash that
Yeah.
gi because I'm like you kind of sweat when you're teaching and like
Even that'll
and
ruin
then
it.
if you're
Even that'll
there,
ruin it.
yeah. Actually, I
Yeah.
feel like my gis smell worse the ones I don't like that I just teach in because you get this weird sweat where it's like you're not. I don't know. It's a weird thing. They start
Yeah.
getting worse smelling than the ones I train in.
When
all
they're
the time.
soaked in sweat, that's when they're better.
Yes, it helps.
Yeah.
You need it completely soaked in sweat.
Sometimes I lift my gi up and like put it in the laundry or something like that after training. It's so heavy. I'm like, how did I sweat that much? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the other day on Friday when I was training, me and Nikki were training and we were doing no-gi. And we were sitting there after stretching, and the puddle that we had underneath of us, like each of us, I was like, this is disgusting. Like, I don't know how
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't feel like I'm sweating that much. And you're sitting there and it's just like, you're sitting now and like, you know, you have like an inch of sweat underneath your butt. And it's like
No
disgusting.
will show you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
It
no-gi
really
is the
shows.
worst whenever you have the puddles, and like basically no one can do anything anymore because you're both sweaty, the floor is sweaty, so no one has any traction, and there's just always gonna be space.
It's always scary to try and like wrestle with people when the floor is that sweaty. I'm like, I don't want to shoot on this person. Like I might like
Yeah.
just completely like slip and hurt myself.
And you guys have good mats. That's
Yeah.
Like, I remember I was training at another academy, and they have those wrestling mats, and they get incredibly slick.
Yeah.
And John Combs was in town, and him and I are training. He's like, wants to do some wrestling. And after like 2 things, I'm like, man, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I can feel my ACLs shaking.
If you
It's
have
like
wrestling
our feet are
shoes
just
on,
sliding around.
does
Yeah.
wrestling shoes help that, you think?
I don't
never
know.
trained with wrestling shoes
Not
before.
on wrestling mats.
No.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it
I've
would
only
still
done it
slip.
once I think it was in St. Louis with Rocky.
Yeah. I don't know, but that's always a really scary situation. You look down and you just see the sweat and you're like, where you step, you're
It's
walking,
awful.
like you slip and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to hurt something.
Yeah.
Let's just sit down.
And we'll finish that podcast similar how we started, hurting people. And we talked first as we got started about how Nick hurt me and how I've yet to forgive him to this day.
And we'll finish it with saying that Jena choked him unconscious.
Twice.
I don't remember the second time.
We talked about this
I know we
last
talked about
week.
it, but it's still very vague in my memory.
I tapped. This is it. I'm tapping. I'm going.
Well, you probably deserved it.
I 100% deserved it. First time as well deserved it. But
I just remember, you can't choke me.
I don't think that's what I said. It was similar.
But like basically,
I said
that was the thing. Like,
I made fun of your
choke.
choke.
Is weak.
And it
And
was
then
weak
put
at the
his hands
time.
on the mat, and it wasn't weak.
It was weak at the time. You made it tighter. But at that point, I've already talked
Doesn't
trash.
remember though.
Can't.
Just
Yeah.
pass out.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Darn
It was
conscious.
fun.
Fun
It's
times.
all fun.
You keep bringing this up, and next time we roll, we'll see
I know.
what
I'm
happens.
gonna get choked unconscious.
And that's why we decided you had to be the first guest ever on the podcast.
Are they
Because
normally an hour?
no, this is the longest podcast we've ever done. So a lot of firsts.
So you think we can make it to 2?
We can
Definitely
make it,
could.
we can make it a two-parter.
All right, I'm done forcing you to make this longer. That was my last one.
But speaking of forcing people to do stuff, you could force people to do everyone if you were wearing a Fuji Sports kimono. And you can go on to fujisports.com right now and you can use the promo code BISHOP and you can check out and get 20% off. So if you've got, friends, middle school gym teachers, counselors, etc., that need a gi this Christmas or Hanukkah, only those two. Though then you can go buy a Fuji Sports kimono and get 20% off, and they'll think you paid full price, and they'll think you're rich
Yeah, sounds great.
or really generous. One of those two, whichever one you want them to think, that's the one they'll think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
We want to thank everybody for watching the podcast, and you can Nick, where can they find you if they're interested?
Not on Instagram.
In San Diego.
You can find him with the bishops most of the time.
Honestly, that's probably
If you
true.
want to follow him on Instagram, follow me, and then you'll see pictures of him every now and then.
Yep.
Or Snapchat. All right.
MySpace too. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining the podcast. We'll catch you next time on
Not fighting.